Hello everyone, my name is Kitty and I'm here today to show you how I made this reversible My Melody Kuromi inspired dress. I love Kuromi and My Melody, they are so cute. So I wanted to make a dress that sort of had both of their looks. So of course one side is pink and white, and if you flip it inside out, you have the black with pink and white lace for more of a Kuromi inspired look. Of course, I do think this pattern is very flexible. You don't have to make it reversible. You could make two separate dresses. You could line your dress. And of course, you don't have to add the sleeves. You could make it sleeveless, or you could add just a little shoulder strap for more of a JSK look. I do think it's very flexible. And overall, I would say it was pretty easy, and hopefully you can make a few adjustments to the pattern so that it'll fit you better. I definitely recommend making a mock-up before you cut into any of your nice fabric. But yeah, otherwise I'm very excited, very pleased with the way it came out, and I'm very happy to share it with you. So let's get going. So to start us off, here I am showing some of my early ideations for this dress. Of course, I was trying to figure out how much fabric do I need, how much lace do I need, and how I would get it off and on. The fabric I chose is a Faux Dupioni, and I really liked it because while one side was very satiny and shiny, the other side had a really beautiful texture to it. I purchased 3 meters of pink, 3 meters of black, and 1 meter of white, which I ended up not needing. I also did a bit of stash busting and tried to use up lace and trim that I already had on hand. In total, I would say both dresses took about 6 to 7 meters of trim. We'll also need matching thread, and I use 6mm elastic. The first thing I did was drape my design, and then I tinkered with it until I was happy with the fit. After I was satisfied, I transferred it to paper for my final pattern. Hopefully, I'll be able to share the pattern with you below. And next, I'll show you a few tips or tricks that you can use to hopefully make it fit you better. Of course, like I said earlier, I do recommend making a mock-up to make sure it fits you better. After I got my pattern on paper, I cut it out so that it was ready to use. Hopefully, you'll be able to print it out and cut it out as well. Here you can see the sleeve portion of the pattern. You're going to want to cut it on the fold and cut 2 of these out. It's going to make sort of a long rectangle with corners lopped off. Next will be your center bodice pattern. You will also cut this on fold and only cut 1 of these out. I have designed mine with more of a sweetheart neckline, but you can change that. Next will be the side of your bodice. If you want to make the bodice of your dress smaller, you can go ahead and make the slope of the bust a little bit smaller as well. That should be able to take it in a little bit. The next piece will be the side back of your bodice. And the last piece will be the back of your bodice, which you will cut on fold to make a very long rectangle. If you decide to make your dress not reversible, you still will need 2 of these pieces because we need to make the channels for the elastic. And an easy way to add a little bit more room to the bodice of your dress is to extend the side of this pattern out a little bit and then cut it on fold. Once you're ready, you can move on to cutting your fabric. The first thing I did was I cut off a really long rectangle about 45 centimeters tall by 300 centimeters long. This will be the skirt of both my pink and my black dress. Then I used the leftover bits to cut out the bodice pieces of my dress. The next step is to start adding trim to everything. I tinkered around with the trim designs for the center bodice pieces, and once I was satisfied, I stitched them into place. Next, I added stripes of trim to my sleeves. I added vertical stripes to my pink sleeves and 2 horizontal stripes to my black sleeves, making sure to leave about 2 or 3 centimeters away from the bottom because I will be adding elastic there. Before adding trim to the skirts of my dress, I made sure to finish up the edges. Because I took advantage of that selvaged edge, all I did was fold it over twice and stitch it down for a rolled hem. I also checked the length of my skirt and decided I wanted about 2 inches shorter, so I trimmed 2 inches off the top. Once the rectangle for your skirt is at a good length and the edges are finished, you can start adding trim. I added several rows of pink trim to my black skirt and just 2 rows of white trim to my pink skirt. I also kept the lace about 1 inch or 2 away from the edge of the skirt unattached. That way I can finish the seam later. Once you've finished with the skirts, you can set them aside and we will move on to the sleeves. Start by taking one of your pink and one of your black sleeves and matching the edges together, pretty sides touching. You'll want to be careful to pin it in place and even pin the center together. Next, you're going to stitch around the whole thing, leaving only one bottom edge open where you can turn it inside out. Here you can see the edge we did not stitch down, and we're going to use that to turn the sleeve inside out. After you have turned it inside out, you can press it down if you like. And then very close along the top and bottom edge, we will be stitching a straight line, which will be a channel for elastic. I actually made 2 rows of straight stitches along the top and bottom edge of the sleeve to create the elastic channel. Here, if you look very closely, I believe you can see on both the top and bottom edge of the sleeve, there is 2 rows of straight stitches. Now we can add elastic into the elastic channels we have made. If you fold your sleeve in half, that should be about how long you need the elastic to be for the top of the sleeve and the bottom. But you can also check the measurement on your own arm. In the end, you should have 4 pieces of cut elastic, 2 for the bottom and 2 for the top of your sleeves. You can then put your piece of elastic on a safety pin and work it through the channel. You might have to seam rip a few threads from where we've sewn the sleeve down. Once your elastic is inside the channel, go ahead and sew both sides of the elastic down inside the sleeve. Once your sleeve looks like this, take the 2 bottom straight edges and match them together. Then straight stitch them down. You're going to then take that little tab that has been created, fold it to one side, and stitch that edge down very carefully. So that's what the seam looks like on the black side. And to just help cover it up on the pink side, I'm going to add a little bit of lace right over that seam. Once we've finished with the sleeves, we can move on and start assembling the bodice. Start by matching the side bodice to the center front piece. Be very careful as you match the curve of the side bodice to the straight edge of the center front. Pin as you go. You can then stitch the pieces together. Next, you will match the side back of your bodice to the side front of your bodice. Pin and then stitch together. This is how it should look, and we will now move on to the back of the bodice. Match the 2 pieces of your pink and black back bodice together, pretty sides touching. You will then straight stitch along the top edge. You can also zigzag stitch it to secure it. Then flip it over so the pretty sides are showing. You can press down this seam and very carefully straight stitch along it to secure it in place. Now, using a straight stitch, we will be creating multiple rows that will be channels for elastic. Just straight stitch horizontally across the back bodice piece and repeat it, making sure that your lines are even as you go. You only want the channels to be a little bit wider than your elastic so they don't slide around too much. After you have finished sewing multiple horizontal lines to create the channels, this is how it should look. Because I only want elastic in every other channel, first I go with a pen and mark each channel I want elastic in. Then I cut several pieces of elastic for each channel that I have marked, and it should be about as long as half of my back bodice piece. Then I start adding my strips of elastic. I put the elastic on a safety pin and thread it through the channels, making sure to stitch the ends securely down as I go. This is how it looks after that first piece of elastic, and I have to keep going, keeping in mind that I'm only adding elastic to every other channel. Once finished, we will briefly set it aside. Returning to the bodice, we are going to attach the sleeves. Start by pinning the sleeves in place. You will pin the dipped armhole portion of your sleeve, matching the armhole portion of your bodice together. Try to match those center seams as best you can. Once they have been well matched together, you can go ahead and stitch the two armholes together. This is how it should look. Now flip it over so the pretty side of the pink is on top and push those sleeves down. You will now be very carefully matching the top edge of your pink bodice to your black bodice together. Use pins and work very slowly. You will also be matching the black bodice armhole to the sleeve armhole as well. You will then be sewing all along that top edge of your bodice, joining all those seams together. Be sure to only catch the armholes of the sleeve in between the two pieces of the bodice. Adding the elasticated back bodice piece can be a little bit tricky, but what you're going to want to do is keep your front bodice piece inside out. You will then sandwich the elasticated back between the bodice pieces, matching the pink side to the pink side and the black side to the black side. And once those edges are matched together, you can straight stitch it down. The idea is that you want to keep the seams hidden on the inside of the bodice. For the other side of the elasticated back, I have pulled it through my two bodice pieces and sandwiched that elasticated back between the black and the pink bodice pieces, and I am matching them together with pins. Afterwards, I will straight stitch it down. Once finished, you can inside out your bodice and your elasticated back will be attached. If you are struggling with this method, you are able just to fold the edges over of the back side piece of your bodice and just top stitch it onto your elasticated back. Now match the wrong sides of your pink and black skirt together, and you can sew along the top edge those skirt pieces adjoining them. You will then use a very long straight stitch and give it another stitch so that you can pull those threads and create a gather. You will want the total gathered length of your skirt to be the same as the bottom of your bodice. I also quickly sewed the back pieces of my skirt together and sewed my lace down. Because I didn't sew it fully to the edge, I'm able to sort of match it up perfectly and fold those edges over. Okay, so here's the skirt with the finished back seam and the gathers. Now grab your skirt and thread it through the neck hole of your bodice. You're going to want to match the edge of the skirt to the bottom edge of your bodice. Take care and be sure to match that back seam on your skirt to the center back of your bodice, and you can start pinning the skirt to the bodice. matching the center front to the center front and the center back to the center back. As you can see, I'm only matching the pink side of my bodice to my skirt. So I'm only pinning one side of my bodice, the pink side of my bodice, to both pieces of my skirt, and I'm just matching it as I go. Another thing to keep in mind is that you want to stretch out that back elasticated piece of your bodice and match it to the skirt as you go. Then you can sew the two pieces of your skirt to one piece of your bodice. And do go ahead and reinforce this stitch, since this is what's going to be reinforcing those gathers and attaching the gathered skirt to your bodice. And flip it inside out when you're ready. Now I decided I was going to hand stitch the black bodice to the black skirt because I thought the black thread wouldn't show up and it would look the least obvious here. So to start, I went ahead and folded the edge of the black bodice under and gave it a quick top stitch down, just to secure that edge folded underneath. Here you can see on the black bodice how I folded the bottom edge underneath and just stitched it down. And now I'm going to start matching it up with the skirt underneath and hand sewing it in place. I started the matching process by finding the center points of both bodices. I made sure that the skirt edge was folded up, and I laid the bodice edge on top of it and very carefully with very small stitches started stitching it in place, working my way around. And now I've worked my way around the dress and I'm finishing up the last of my hand stitching, which will complete the dress. So now we can give it a try on inside it out and see how it looks. watching this video. If you like this video and want to see other fun DIY videos, please like and subscribe for more. Thank you. Bye.